I always remember this one business studies class when I was like 16 doing my GCSEs. So I stand there at the front of the class and I'm like, I'm the business. And obviously my business teacher's like, you failed this assignment, Emma, you can't be the business. I was like, why can't I be the business? I feel like it was intuition. I feel like all throughout my life there are those intuitive hits. It was these little moments where I look back and I think, God, my soul knew what I was here to do even before I had any inkling. There's a theme with my businesses that the breakdowns of my relationships seem to create the catalyst for my businesses. It's so interesting how these paths unfold and the kind of what happens in our lives to really like propel us into wanting to make a change or bettering ourselves or starting a business. I'm either going to take my life or I've got to change my life. And I knew I wanted to change my life, but I didn't know how because what I was doing like clearly wasn't working. When I found the law of attraction, it was almost like that light in the dark. This is different. It's almost like a remembering. Of course, this is how life works. Of course, this is how I've got here. Of course, this is how life is.
Ambition is not a dirty word. Impact is not synonymous with struggle. In fact, massive impact is absolutely possible with joy, fun, and sublime integrity. I'm Bianca Bess, author and founder of The Burnout Business, and this is the Big Impact Show, where success meets grace. I'm delighted to be joined today in the studio on the Big Impact Show with the incredible Emma Mumford. Now, Emma is not only a multiple best-selling author, but a renowned podcast host and really the queen of manifestation. So I'm super excited to learn from her today and discuss all things aligned abundance. Emma, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Bianca, for having me. I'm really excited to talk all things business and talk about success today.
Exactly. We are going to dive deep into success, and you are so beautifully a woman who epitomizes success with grace. And I'm deep into your latest book, twinkling away here in the studio, Aligned Abundance. I'd love you to just tell our listeners and viewers your story and how you got to this place where you're here talking to me about success and having just published another one of your incredible books around how to make life really feel quite magical. What's your story?
Yeah, so my story has two parts to it. I always say there has to be the before story to have the story of how I got into spirituality and manifestation and, running the business that you see me, running today. So my first business started really in 2012, and there's a theme with my businesses that the breakdowns of my relationships seem to create the catalyst for my businesses. So, looking back, it's so interesting how these paths unfold and the kind of what happens in our lives to really like propel us into wanting to make a change or bettering ourselves or starting a business. So for me, it's definitely been those rock bottom moments in life that have really propelled me into wanting to change and do different and help people overcome those things that I've overcome in life. So back in 2012, I was in my first not so great relationship. I was experiencing anxiety, depression. I was a banking manager at one of the UK's leading banks. Never wanted to be a banker, never had any experience, so I don't even know how I got that job. But I just kind of fell into these corporate roles, sort of leaving school at 18. And, I didn't want to go to university. I knew I wanted to run a business, but back then, obviously, it was you had to create a product or you had to, create something. You can't just be a business. And I always remember this one business studies class when I was, I think, like 16 doing my GCSEs. And we had to create like a little, I guess, like a vision board, like a mood board of what our business would be. So I stand there at the front of the class and I'm like, I'm the business. And obviously, my business teacher's like, you failed this assignment, Emma, you can't be the business.
No,
You
were ahead of your time.
This was not the assignment. And obviously I was like, oh, but why can't I be the business? Obviously not knowing at all, but I feel like it was intuition. I feel like all throughout my life there are those intuitive hits. Like I remember being even younger in, WH Smith or my mum and being like, my book's going to be up there one day. And what would tell an 8-year-old to do that? Like it was these little moments where I look back and I think, God, my soul knew. Like my soul knew what I was here to do even before I had any inkling. So left school, got my GCSEs and A-levels, did business studies in both, and was like, I want to do a business, but I've been told I have to create a product. I don't have an invention to create, so I'll just go and work in corporate jobs, get into the banking industry. And very quickly, I realized that was not for me. And in the first not so great relationship I was in, we had debt collectors start turning up at our door, and I had no idea why they were there, who they were there for. Obviously, my partner at the time. And he had accumulated over £30,000 worth of debt from previous relationships and just obviously never told anybody. And then it all catches up when the address catches up. So that was really scary at 18 to have bailiffs at your door and be like, how do we navigate this? You know, this is the one thing you don't want at your door. So obviously, being the practical Virgo and the banker that I was like, well, if I take out a preferential loan, because I get obviously better rates as an employee of the bank, being the practical Virgo that I am, I was like, I'll take out a preferential loan, I get preferential rates, and I'll clear it, and you can just pay me back. Obviously, I think everyone listening can guess what happened next after doing that. The relationship broke down and he never paid a single penny of that loan back. So it was only 7,000 I took out, luckily, to help him. But obviously, that was my first real big adult experience of debt and trust in a relationship and taking that on myself. So because, you know, there wasn't Claire's Law and all these incredible things out there now that people can use when they are left with their partner's debt, it was my legal responsibility and it was my job to clear that at such a young age. Meanwhile, I'm still working in the bank, having anxiety attacks every day, panic attacks, because I'm putting people into debt. I'm in debt. I'm triggered by the debt. And it was a spiral which just really sent my depression even more into the depths. So I couldn't stay at that job. I couldn't even turn up to work. You know, I couldn't even get out of the bathroom most days because I was just so riddled with anxiety and fear and depression and all kinds of things, as you can imagine. So I left that job, left that relationship, and was then 18, 19, fresh out into the world again, healing her heart, moving back in with her parents, 7 grand's debt to clear. And that's when I came across extreme couponing, which is the most random thing in the world.
Tell me, tell me.
So in America, extreme couponing is huge. In the UK, it was, you know, you could watch the TV show, but nobody was couponing. There was nothing over here like that. So I was like, well, hang on a minute. If all these Americans are saving thousands and thousands of dollars worth of money with these coupons, well, if I could do that, I could start clearing my debt quicker. So I got a part-time job to obviously get some money coming in and I started couponing. And you know, there weren't that many resources here in the UK at that time to find these coupons. So I really just took it upon myself to find these coupons, you know, like really get creative. And, you know, I started getting myself out of debt really quickly. And within a few months, my spare room literally was like a huge stockpile like you see on the TV shows. And my friends would come around like, Emma, like you need to tell people how to do this. Like this is incredible. So it was a huge diver that I never really saw coming, but ultimately it was helping me get out of debt. It was helping me through my depression. It was helping me in so many ways to have that positive focus of couponing and, you know, doing something positive. So 6 months later of my friends bullying me into starting Facebook and helping people do it, because I thought, well, who am I to do this? Nobody's going to want to listen to me talking about coupons. But I was wrong, and I'm glad my friends did push me to do this. So I started a Facebook page called Extreme Couponing and Deals UK, and this was back in 2013. And within 6 months, it had grown to like 100,000 followers. The press were getting involved. They were nicknaming me the coupon queen. I was on This Morning presenting, you know, slots every week about couponing and money saving. And it was just the most bizarre time of my life to go from depressed, having a panic attack in the bank 6 months prior to I'm on national TV helping people save money.
Incredible.
So that is my first really random business. I didn't ever think you could monetize coupons or earn an income from that. So obviously I was just running this page just wanting to help people. I was doing it for free for a whole year. And then I learned how to monetize, I learned affiliate marketing and how I could bring, you know, turn it into a business essentially and make it my full-time job. So my debt then got cleared, which was amazing. And for 6 amazing years, I ran that company and helped people. And by the time I sold it, it was about, I think it was 500,000 followers in the UK. So it did so much in its 6 years. And then we go on to 2016.
Huge congratulations. And isn't that funny how your soul led you into entrepreneurialism, but with something quite kooky and not anything you would have learned in business studies at school?
No. So that for me was just so divine in itself that I could help people, and it taught me how to run a business. It taught me social media. It taught me so many valuable things that obviously now are so valuable to me, even in this business. So 2016 is when I had my spiritual awakening. And this was again triggered by my second not so great relationship and the breakdown of that. And the depression and anxiety had been there all throughout that period of 2012 all the way up to 2016. It was just my couponing business gave me such purpose and gave me such light, I guess, to carry on and keep going, because I had such a purpose to help people, and it was so enjoyable to run that business as well. So I think people would probably look at my life and say, well, you know, you were on this morning, you had a multi six-figure business, like you're so young, you're 20, like you're doing all these incredible things, like how could you be depressed? But I think that really for me was the epitome of polarity as well, of I could have all that success, money, happiness and joy, but also be experiencing trauma, depression and anxiety still. So for me, there just wasn't that vocabulary of, you know, I was going to traditional therapy, I was trying CBT, I was trying antidepressants. Nothing was helping that feeling and that depression that was still very much there. So really that all got kind of brought up to the forefront with the spiritual awakening, and that's when I found the law of attraction. And it was at my rock bottom moment of wanting to take my life and end it all, because I was so unfulfilled and so unhappy and had so much trauma that I had no awareness of at that point, that it really was that kind of come to God moment almost that people have of, you know, I'm either going to take my life or I've got to change my life. And I knew I wanted to change my life, but I didn't know how, because what I was doing like clearly wasn't working. So when I found the law of attraction, it was a bit like couponing. It was almost like that light in the dark of, oh wow, okay, this, you know, this is different. It's almost like a remembering, like, of course this is how life works, of course this is how I've got here, of course this is, you know, how life is. So it felt like a remembering when I started to dive into The Secret and watch The Secret and all the great things that we discover when we find the law of attraction. And a bit like couponing, very quickly I just fell in love with it, and it became such a positive focus that I could put my energy into. Very quickly I learned what self-love was. Within 3 to 4 weeks I wasn't having anxiety attacks anymore, which was huge for me because they had been there throughout, you know, that whole 8-year period and longer, and I'd never known anything different. So for me to wake up and not feel anxious was like the best manifestation ever at that point, because my health was what I really, really, really wanted to improve and what I really wanted to manifest getting better. You know, career success is great, money is great, but if you don't have your health, you know, that is your greatest wealth. So for me, it was always about curing my depression, moving past that, being happy, learning how to be happy. So the law of attraction really gave me so much of that even early on, and really kind of set me up for the journey that I was going to go down with spirituality and with manifestation. So about a year into my spiritual journey, my law of attraction journey, I was talking about it more on my channels. I had a YouTube channel, so which was more kind of Emma rather than couponing. And people were like, why don't you teach the law of attraction? Like, you're really good at this. You're helping us every week. You're combining money saving, couponing and manifestation in some weird way. It worked and people loved it. Like, why don't you talk about this more? And I think it was almost like that intuition as well at that moment of, yeah, no, I am ready to step into this. Like, I love helping people save money. And I also love helping people manifest money. But what if I could help people feel good in all areas of their life and heal their past, heal their trauma, and live a fulfilled, happy life through manifestation like I've been able to do? So I manifested the buyer for my business back in 2018, my couponing business, and I sold that in 2018. And I've been running this business, you see, full time since 2017.
Wow, Emma, that is such a story. You've accomplished so much, and you're still relatively young in the grand scheme of things, and especially in terms of running a business. Now, the story that you've just described there, I love the fact that right from the very beginning, you talk about your soulful calling. What was your childhood like in terms of you even being able to reflect back on that? soul calling, on sort of intuitively being drawn in a certain direction. Were you in an environment where you could talk about feeling that almost defiant, intuitive desire to have a published book up on a bookshelf? Did you have support around you where you could use that language, or did that come a lot later in life once you'd had your spiritual awakening?
Yeah, well, I think like most people, my parents were definitely not spiritual, and I don't even think I realized what I was saying either. It was just such, I guess, a knowing and normal to me that it didn't feel like, oh, I'm saying something really spiritual and divine. And, I was 8 years old in some of those scenarios. So, when you're a kid, you are connected to that childlike magic. You are more connected to your intuition. And, the wonders of the world is when we grow up, we obviously start to suppress it down and grow up and, enter into the human world in a different way. So I think looking back, I wouldn't say it wasn't encouraged. I think my parents were just like, yeah, yeah, Emma, yeah, yeah. And like, I think there was such determination with me as a child, even growing up. Like, I think, I used to love like doing dancing and singing and acting. So I think there was always that passion of like, get in front of people, even if I didn't necessarily understand what that meant, or I just really enjoyed dancing, acting, and singing, for example. So I was very much always like a performing arts theatre kid. I was very much someone who loved the arts, loved creativity, loved all those kinds of things. So I think my parents were just like, yeah, yeah, Emma. And then they maybe didn't realize maybe there was some intuition behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're obviously clearly a grafter. And when you spot an opportunity, you don't just dabble with it, you seize it and you really expand it and explore it. Can you tell us about that drive within?
Yeah, I often think like, does it come from my dad? So my dad was an entrepreneur, and obviously growing up, I would see him run his business, and like sometimes he would like get me involved, and I'd help him out, and I think he just always taught me this like really, yeah, I guess, business mindset of, earning money, working hard. And, I saw him work incredibly hard, much to my mum's annoyance sometimes. Like we'd be on holiday and she's like, Ken, stop taking work calls. We're on holiday. So, I would see this around me, this determination. And I also saw my dad's business fail as well. And obviously the financial impact of that. So I definitely think, as all of our childhoods absolutely impact our mindsets, our identities, and who we are when we grow up, I definitely think all of that must have absolutely had an impact on how I show up in business and that drive I have. But whether it's from my dad or whether it is that intuition, I definitely think there has always been a drive and determination. I don't necessarily know where it all comes from. I think there is definitely a spiritual aspect to it, of maybe just that soul knowing of, this is what you've come to do. You're here to do it young. Get on with it. Let's get these karmic lessons out of the way. But yeah, I feel that a lot of the time on podcasts I'm asked, like, if you could summarize your journey in a word, what would it be? And I always say resilience, because life has not been easy for me. I've touched the surface of the experiences that I've gone through. And I feel that no matter what I've overcome in my life, no matter what challenges have been put in my path or I've experienced, I've turned that pain into power. I've turned that pain into a way to help somebody else to heal from that pain. And I think that that resilience is that drive from my purpose, my mission, my soul's journey here to be able to help others, get out of trauma, to heal abuse in their childhood, to heal all these and transmute all these different experiences, so that maybe that looks like success in a business. Maybe that looks like just peace that they want to manifest into their life. But I think there definitely is a big theme in my journey, in my experiences of resilience, to be able to turn that into a way to help other people turn their pain or their experiences into their power and their message.
And it's very much that aspect of the wounded healer, similar to the work that I do around burnout. If I hadn't experienced so much significant traumatic burnout myself, I wouldn't be able to teach as a burnout authority. So thank you for sharing the real honesty around the second brutal milestone, life-changing moment where you really hit that significant low. that must have been incredibly harrowing, and I imagine it felt very solitary as you were going through it. And describing the way you just described your route out of that very dark time, you described stepping into the law of attraction and starting with self-love and self-care. Now, this is something I know that a lot of listeners and clients that I work with, and even myself, will still struggle with that sort of, well, I know what I should be doing, but getting ourselves into this place where you actually take accountability for, right, no, I really am going to love myself, and I'm going to be kind to myself, and I'm going to embody self-compassion, is quite challenging. What is your advice and the experience that you went through at that very jolty life moment?
Yeah, and I think it's so much easier for us to almost be against ourselves because that's what we're taught in society. And when we don't understand what our ego and our inner critic is, we almost feel like we're against ourselves a lot of the time. And I know I definitely did, where before I spiritually awakened, I generally didn't know what happiness was because I had so much trauma, PTSD, and depression underneath the surface that I didn't have vocabulary for at that time. How could I have possibly have reached to happiness? How could I have possibly have reached to those higher vibrations and higher emotions when I didn't have that experience and I didn't have those tools as well to be able to even tap into that? So I think a lot of it is awareness and obviously having the tools to be able to support ourselves. But then it's also a case of, I did absolutely sit in victim mode for a very long time. And I think when we feel helpless or we're like, but I don't know how to help myself, it's not that you necessarily don't want to. It's, well, how? Where do I get started? What do I do? And it can almost feel overwhelming when we've been against ourselves for so long to then try and do the shadow work and inner work and integrate all these different things and learn these different tools and modalities. So I think self-care and self-love is such a great accessible way to start with this, because when we can start to begin to open up to loving ourselves, it's not about just, being Beyonce, being like, I love myself from day one, because for some people that may feel so fake. It may feel so far away from the truth of how they feel. So for me, it's definitely a gentle leaning in practice of how can I begin to like myself? I don't need to love myself here and now because that might not feel real and we need to feel it authentic. But how can I begin to like myself here and now? And when the inner critic and ego pipes up and tells you, well, who are you to do that? You can't do that. You're not worthy of that. This is our inner child. This is all it is. It's not some, little devil on our shoulder trying to put us down or sabotage us. It's our inner child who just wants to be seen, who just wants to be loved and just wants to be heard. And there is so many not so great teachings in the law of attraction around negative thoughts and, get rid of your ego, just remove it completely. And you can't. Your inner child is with you for life. And we shouldn't be trying to remove or eliminate any aspect of ourselves, because every aspect of ourselves is ourself and needs to be integrated into the light and loved back into the light and into a place of balance and peace. So I would say to people, just begin to like yourself, first of all. Don't tackle the hill of loving yourself if that feels so steep and far away. Just begin to like yourself, whether that's carving out some time each week for a self-care practice, whether that is just spending some more quality time with yourself. The amount of times that we say we spend with ourselves, but is it actually quality time? Or if you've got Netflix on in the background, are you doing something else? Are you scrolling through TikTok? Is that actual quality time with yourself? Are you getting to know yourself? Are you getting to know your inner child? Are you expressing your inner child? Are you having fun in life? The quickest way to having a happy inner child is obviously acknowledging them and talking to them and reassuring them when they need it, but also inviting in that childlike magic back into our adult life, because life is serious at the best of times. It's heavy, it's dense. We all know how it feels to be on Earth School right now. So bringing in that childlike magic and being able to reconnect with our inner child is half of the healing work in itself. So I think connect to the inner child. I've got meditations on my YouTube channel if anybody wants to start to begin that journey or learn a bit more about it. Set yourself up with a little, even if it's 5-10 minutes a week, just for you to spend quality time with yourself, whether that's journaling, maybe it's doing nothing, maybe you just want to sit with yourself, and that's okay too. It's just really creating those mindful moments in our week just for us, but making sure it's filling that cup, making sure it is nourishing and it's not kind of just like what I'm so guilty of doing sometimes, almost just like having that scroll through social media time just to decompress. We can recognize that as trying to regulate our nervous system, but it's actually not really regulating anything. It's just a way to kind of cope and decompress, and we're kind of distracting ourselves really from what's causing that. So just be gentle with it. Like, Rome wasn't built in a day. And when it comes to self-love and self-care, it's just about dipping your toes in, carving out some time, and just beginning to create that relationship with yourself where you can start to just be more kind to yourself, start to just be more compassionate to yourself, speak to yourself with more love. Because that is that inner child you're speaking to when your ego pipes up. So give that ego, that inner critic, more love, and you'll see it shift.
Wonderful. That makes it feel so much more accessible, rather than this intimidating, I've got to change my whole life. So thank you. That definitely feels like really sound advice. Just start small. So I love the language that you use around magic, around vibration, and I'd like to talk about your fantastic book, please. But let's just go over how many books you've written and what the themes are, and then let's go into what this book comprises, please.
So it's kind of Aligned Abundance is kind of the fifth book, kind of the sixth book, really. So I self-published my first book, Spiritual Queen, back in 2019. Was it 2019 or was it 2018? I think it was 2019. And that book was really just an introduction into the law of attraction, a bit more about my journey and my experiences, and kind of my introduction into being an author as well. Positively Wealthy came out in 2020, and this was the book that changed everything for me and obviously my community and people manifesting. Like, so many people have read Positively Wealthy now, which is so amazing to hear and see, because that is the book that changed so much for me in my life as well. So Positively Wealthy is about redefining your version of wealth. So people often mistake it as a money book, and I hate to disappoint, it is not a money book. There is a mention of money mindset, there is a focus on it, of course, but it is a book all about redefining your wealth. And it's a fun 33-day manifesting challenge to dip your toes in, get started with the law of attraction, see it in action, and almost like a really good reset if you want to reset, even if you've been manifesting for a while. Hurt, Healing, Healed was the next book that came out. This is almost like your next book after Positively Wealthy. You can read them in any order. I never say there's a particular order, but if you were to kind of have an order, the Hurt, Healing, Healed would definitely come afterwards. So this is a book all about the inner world, the inner work, limiting beliefs, fears, blocks, all of that. So maybe you've been trying to manifest for a while, but you're meeting resistance, you have blocks, the inner critic's piping up. There's some resistance there, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. Or maybe you don't know how to start to identify those limiting beliefs or inner work. So this is the book for exactly that. Identifying the blocks, working through them, and stepping into that aligned abundance. And the third, well, I say it's a third book, but the next book in that series is Aligned Abundance, but Manifesting Rituals technically did come first. So Manifesting Rituals is my oracle deck. It's an affirmation deck, which is like no other affirmation deck out there. So it helps you to manifest the life of your dreams. So for me, I love to see Manifesting Rituals as a great addition to your daily practice, whether you want to pull a card, pull an affirmation for the day. And inside the booklet, you have a channeled message, you have prompts, you have actions, and a crystal to work with to actually embody that affirmation. So it's not like other decks where you just have an affirmation and you say it out loud and hope for the best. It's like a coaching little booklet as well, to be like, right, here's how you embody that energy. Here's how you get to that affirmation and experiencing that in your life. So, it's great for someone who wants some loving messages from the universe or their higher self, or just wants some guidance along their manifestation path. And then Aligned Abundance is the newest release. And this is almost like the book after Hurt, Healing, Healed. Again, it can be read in any order, any expertise. Even if you're a beginner, you could pick up Aligned Abundance. Like, I always start people from the basics because that's important, even if you've been doing this for 10 plus years. And Aligned Abundance is really about releasing expectations, becoming magnetic, and manifesting the life of your dreams. So Aligned Abundance is a full energy based book. It talks about turning up your magnetism, regulating your nervous system to hold and sustain more abundance in your life. It talks about working with the cycles and seasons of nature, and most importantly, what alignment is and why alignment is important in the manifesting process.
Wow, it sounds so rich. I mean, every single one of those books is a necessary book. You just talked then about increasing your magnetism. What do we do? Can you tell our listeners, give us a sneaky peek of how do we do that?
Yeah, so nervous system work is half of it, because this is what I learned in my journey was such a huge key to why I was hitting certain ceilings in my business, in my personal life with manifestations. Like, I was manifesting incredible things, but there was almost like this block, this kind of ceiling that I kept hitting, and I couldn't quite work out, well, how do I get past this ceiling? What is this ceiling? And, I did all my hurt, healing, healed work, went through the blocks, and I was like, no, my mindset's there. Like, I don't feel there's energetic blocks in terms of beliefs or my mindset. And that's where I realized through, therapy, through PTSD work, through the somatic work, that my nervous system was so hugely unregulated. So yeah, I'd manifested great things with an unregulated nervous system. But if I really wanted that aligned abundance, my soul's desires, and to really step into who I was meant to be in this lifetime and the abundance I was meant to manifest, I had to have that regulated nervous system. So the nervous system is a whole podcast episode in itself, and there is a whole explanation in the book for people who are like, okay, what is the nervous system and how does this work? How do I regulate it? But essentially, our nervous system, which is part of our body, part of, our beautiful body, is determining what we're holding. So say, for instance, we want to manifest money. You might have great success manifesting a certain amount, but you might have that block where you just can't quite get to where you want to be with your money mindset or with the money that you are creating in your life. Now, where the nervous system comes into this is our nervous system is primal. It's there to protect us. It's there to protect us against danger, against death, dinosaurs, tigers, all of these things. Our nervous system is wired to keep us alive, basically. It doesn't care about our evolution. It doesn't care about our mindset. It does not care about our success or manifestation. All it cares about is that you are safe and that you are not going to die, basically. So what happens now in modern times is that our nervous system misunderstands what danger is sometimes. So you winning the lottery or you having the business of your dreams or the success of your dreams, you might think that's the best thing that could ever happen to me. But your nervous system might think, oh, heck no, that would be so dangerous. We need to keep that as far away from us as possible. Now, that's linking up to the subconscious mind, because if the subconscious mind has a story or a belief in there of, like I had, more money equals more responsibility, my nervous system was like, well, hang on a minute, Emma can't even cope with the load she has right now. So why would we have more money? Because that's more responsibility. And yeah, we haven't got time for that. We do not have the space to hold more responsibility. So my nervous system was then sabotaging my desire by keeping it as far away as possible to keep me safe, to keep me, not burning out. And obviously I was still in an unregulated space, but it was there trying to protect me from huge danger that it thought that more money meant, which obviously, as we know, it doesn't mean that. So our nervous system can misinterpret what dangers are based upon our beliefs, our identities, and what is in that subconscious mind. So I then had to essentially retrain my nervous system and regulate it to be able to show it that more money didn't equal more responsibility, that it gave me more opportunities and more access to things that would actually help create more spaciousness in my life, more calm in my life, and more joy in my life. And that was a process which the book walks you through. But for me, that is such a pivotal part of the manifestation process, which allows you to step into more. And that really ties into vibration as well. There's a lot of talk of raising your vibration, raising your frequency in the manifestation sphere. But we have to create emotional regulation first. Otherwise, what you end up seeing is roller coasters of highs, lows. And you're like, why can I not stay, in high vibration? And 1 minute I'm really high, the next minute I'm really low. And that's because there's no baseline with that emotional regulation in the nervous system. So when you balance the nervous system, the vibration has a steady foundation so that, inevitably life's going to happen. We can't be high vibe 24/7. We live in a world of many polarities. It's not possible. But what you will find is that your vibration is more consistent, so that when something does happen, you're not going to be hitting the rock bottom again. You'll come down the emotional scale and you'll want to process that and sit with that and feel all of that. But you'll find yourself authentically move back up that scale quicker because you've got that emotional regulation. So the nervous system is always the beginning part of that. But creating emotional stability in your vibration helps you to really expand into the magnetism, because I could say, right, let's raise your magnetism, let's manifest all these things. But if your nervous system and you don't have the capacity to hold and sustain those desires, you'll just keep pushing them away. They'll never manifest.
It's wonderful, wonderful work that really synergizes with a lot of the work that I do, actually, which is I believe you cannot ever prevent burnout unless you've done the work physically, mentally, and emotionally. And only when you address all three dimensions do you actually have that foundational certitude to be able to thrive, which really mirrors what you've just described beautifully there. Thank you so much. So I have one last question for you, please, Emma. What's your big dream?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's changed so much over the years, and I feel so lucky to be able to have achieved so many of those big dreams already. So I think in the last few years I've really had to sit with that answer of what is next? What is the big dream? Because sometimes when you achieve all those things and you've had such a season of achieving those manifestations, you almost, like, I'm always someone that's like, don't jump to the next thing, like sit in it, enjoy it, be present. When it's time to focus on something else, it will come in, it will feel good. So I think I've been in that process of letting those steps unfold without having to force a bigger vision. Or I'm not someone who, I talk about nervous system work, I'm definitely not someone that's always like pushing people to keep going for more, because I think that dysregulates us sometimes as well. So I've been in a place of, okay, how can I balance enjoying the present moment, enjoying the hard work, and also still having the big vision? And I think that big vision for me right now is actually growing what I have. It's not necessarily about doing new things. I think it's more seeing everything I have achieved in the business and everything it has done and actually amplifying that more. So for me, that's the big dream right now, is continuing to do what I love every single day and it never ever feeling like work, and being able to help more people to tap into that energy that is already there and in, my offerings, in everything I offer, but being able for more people to access that and have accessibility to it. So that's the big dream for now.
A wonderful dream. It's a big dream. It's a gorgeous, glossy dream. Thank you so much for sharing that. And can you tell our listeners and viewers how they can get in touch with you and work with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on pretty much every social media channel, but Instagram is where I love to be the most, at I am Emma Mumford. You can also find everything I've mentioned, my books, my membership, everything that I do, all on my website, emmamumford.co.uk.
Fantastic. And I will include all of the links down below. Emma, you have been an inspiring, high vibe guest. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Can't recommend this book highly enough. Please, everyone, make sure you read it, absorb and learn how to have aligned abundance. Emma, thank you, and enjoy your wedding, which is coming up very soon. So sending you lots of love and good wishes for that.
Oh, thank you so much, Bianca.
That was a wonderfully exploratory interview. I really appreciate Emma's wisdom and the conversation around our vibes and our magnetism. And what struck me most is how in Emma's journey of understanding how to come into a place of aligned abundance, she realized that it was regulating her nervous system that was absolutely key to eliminating those various life blocks. And I think there's something in that for us all, that it's not just about stress management so that we could survive and avoid burnout, but actually it's about regulating our nervous systems to come into alignment, to then open up the potentiality for new things that we want to flow into our lives. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And please be sure to subscribe and watch the next episode of The Big Impact Show, where I will be interviewing another gorgeous guest who is stepping into this wonderful realm of success with grace and teaching us how.